Hello, welcome back to Crafting Camper Co. Coming to you this week with some fantastic news. I'm Dan, a photographer, filmmaker with a passion for building anything with my hands. Over the last year, I've built my own campervan and enjoyed it thoroughly. Now I've taken the leap to leave the security of my full-time job at Mercedes to build bespoke, luxury campervans. This is set to be a long, difficult journey of ups and downs, and I'm excited to share it all with you. Over the course of the last week, there's been a slight delay with Project 2, and that's because I've been in the storage unit where Project 1 is currently kept. And the reason why I've been spending time in the storage unit where Project 1 is kept is because I've been given a list of slight amendments and customisations to make for the person that's going to buy Project 1. And over the course of the last few days, I have managed to successfully complete all of those, and I can happily tell you the big news. Project 1 is sold. Now, while that has meant that the Project 2 has taken the back seat just for a couple of days, it does mean that now I can focus 100% of my efforts onto creating the second beautiful camper. I'm really pleased with the person that's bought Project 1. He's an absolutely fantastic guy. Canoes, so he's got the big van to hold the canoes on the roof. We've agreed to potentially do some upgrades into the future, and as well a lot of the things which I'm implementing on this van, like a lot of the materials used, we actually agreed to get that and retrofit that onto Project 1, just so then it levels it up that extra little bit. One thing I found whenever I'm creating anything is often if I can do it again from the start, then there's quite a few things that have changed. That commercially when running a business is not always the best thing, because while the second project will be good, the first one, it's uneconomical to be able to do that. And so what a fantastic opportunity it was to be able to do all of the improvements that I wanted to do on Project 1 whilst remaining economically viable, because he was going to buy the thing. And that deal is now done, and so I need to shift my mindset, get onto Project 2, which is exactly what this video is going to be doing. And so a quick reminder on the state of affairs of Project 2. We've got the pop top installed, we've got the windows and side pods installed, and everything is stripped and ready and sound deadened. As we went through in the last video, the big plan and the decision making on everything is the first part. Actually then getting it ordered and it all arriving is the second part. We're starting to receive lots and lots of parcels in the post, which next door have thankfully taken in whilst I've not been here. And before I get too excited with all of them, there is the electrical wiring which I need to do before I then put the last layer of insulating on. And things like the flooring and the walls. And so a big first thing to do before I start planning anything out is to create a plan, is to draw up as I have done here on the board and just wire where everything's going to go, so then that then gives me a clear plan of where to make my holes, where to seal the edges of the windows off and the metalwork, and where I can expect and plan all of the termination points of the wiring to be. It's also very handy as well to make sure I don't forget anything, so I don't have to keep ripping the walls off to put more wires in. So let's get some music on. Let's write down the plan. Let's put and administer the U-bend to the windows and a single U-bend to the walls. This U-bend is a double U-bend, which just goes over the cut edge of the window and the inner skim of the wall. And the single goes around all of the edges of the van where all of the wiring's going, as to stop the any risk of the wires rubbing on the edge of the metal. There's three parts to sound deadening and insulating the van. The first one is the sound deadening dodo mats. I installed them all last week. You can see them dotted in silver all around the van. They will deaden the sounds from the outside. Then second, I've got a liner. So this is a thermo liner. It's got a sticky back on it, reflective surface to keep the heat in, and it offers the first line of insulation. Then I've got a vapor liner to put over the top of pretty much everything, so all the wires and everything are in. And I have got some wool for the bigger cavities, some recycled bottle wool, and that will serve as the second
layer, a more porous texture to hold the air in and to create a barrier between the outside cold and the inside warm. So I'm going to do the liner of the van before I do the wiring, because as this is sticky, if I do ever need to get in and adjust any of the wires or anything, I don't want to be pulling this, whereas I don't mind pulling a little bit of the bottle foam out, which can just be replaced back over the top. So for the electrics, as I'm starting to do the wiring now that the base level of the insulation is in, the main power bank is going to be down by the wheel well, and a lot of the switching for everything is going to be up here in a cabinet. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to interrupt each one of the circuits of the appliances and electronics by putting a switch in between the earth points. So when earthing for 12 volt electric specifically, I'll be able to put an earth point on the chassis of the van here, then connect the battery to the chassis of the van, and then you've got a common ground. And so that'll create a whole circuit for the electrons to be able to flow through and power whatever you power it. Now where then the switch, once it's here, so a little flick switch, if I interrupt the earth, then there won't be a common ground with the chassis of the van, and therefore the appliance or electrical item will then turn off. That's the idea anyway. After doing the diagrams and everything, I think that I need 8 wires running up and down here. So I'm going to put 10 in just for future expansion and just in case I've miscounted. The chassis of the van, of course, is used just to keep everything nice and stable, so I don't want to drill in holes through there. And inconveniently, there are where you would expect there to be channels and lines, there's not. There is, however, one just at the back of here. There's a small little section there which has been cut out, which then I can channel wire fish through down to the top of the wheel well just here, and then run the cable in there through and down the bottom. I've also, just for whenever the wires come in contact with an edge, I've got some U-trim just so then there's no rubbing on the wires. And I'm also going to wrap the wires in conduit, again just for additional protection, and then I'm going to wrap any of the contact points in electrical like wiring harness tape, just to avoid any rattling or noises. There we go. Now I've got the fish line through, I'm just going to connect just one piece of wire, pull that back up, give myself enough room and just determine how long I need each one of the cables to be. I can then take that out, create the loom which I need to be able to then fish back up and go from there. One of the most important things when making a wiring harness is to label everything, even if it's just wires 1 through to 8, get them all labelled. That took way longer than what I thought, but the wiring loom is now in, so it's got all 10 wires which are wrapped in loom tape and then into conduit and then fixed at the top, protected against the metal wiring by some U-trim. It then comes down this column, across, and it fires where the battery's going to be. The fuse box is going to be located right by the battery, where a lot of the switches are all coming. For some of the appliances that are going to be on the right hand side of the van and don't necessarily need to be switched, I've got some 10mm squared wire just to split the power off just before the fuse board, run it up, over and above and down to a second fuse bar on the right hand side, which then I can fuse some of the appliances like the diesel heater and like some of the USB sockets and things like that. It saves running multiple cables up and all around the van. There's just then the one which goes across to power everything on the driver's side. A big part of the process when wrapping and getting a nice finish on the Sprinter is to wrap the metal at the back. Any exposed metal can bring colding and condensation from the outside, so I want to get that wrapped. In order to get a good finish, the factory wiring that supports the lights, the motion sensor, the camera and the rear lights runs right where I need to wrap, and conveniently goes down and into the cavities. So I'm going to have to unplug the pins, unplug the connectors, push out the pins, reroute all of the wiring in a more convenient place, and then push the pins back into the slots, so then I can get that wire up into the ceiling on this side and then into a more convenient place on it. I'm taking the light off outside, pull that through, you can unplug the connector, and then taking off the door hose, so then you can get through to the second connector for the upper light. I've unconnected the camera and the rear light. You can see here we're starting to get the harness free, and I'm just at the corner now. Unbolted the air, and I just need to continue now taking out these lights, which then all of these are just on clips. The wire itself can go above the ceiling, which is quite good. I'm going to have to just tap a hole into the side there to reroute the wires behind, because all of this cavity is all open. It's frustrating why they don't do that from the factory, but it is what it is. The rear lights just come out with two T25 bolts, and then they're in with like a plastic rivet which just needs popping out of place. Kind of got to do it as straight as possible just to make sure that they don't snap. But I have got spares in case you do. There we go, that's the rivet there at the top just by my hand. You just need a screwdriver to unpin the plug. Or the pry. Just the rest of these pins, which hook up into the chassis of the van, and just give them a pull straight out. So my hope and plan with this is there's a small room there to be able to reroute a hole. So I've gone for a hole bit which, with the biggest connector that's going through the hole, put on its side smaller than the cross section of the hole I'm going to be doing. I'll have to try and get it all through without needing to repin anything, that'd be nice. There we go. So now the hole's in the van, I'm going to start and reroute. We've got the existing wiring for all of the electrics and the switchboard coming up here. So the wires are going to run up and along the roof and then into and through these holes here. I'm also going to put some U-trim on there just to protect the wires as I don't brush against the metal. When taking a panel van like this, stripping it down, pulling it apart and getting it ready to be a camper van, of course one of the big things is taking the bulkhead out. And so in order to conceal the wiring, the bolts that are at the back of the wire holders which hold the railing, and then also the gaps that the bulkhead leave behind the driver's and passenger seat, which you can see here. There's a rather large gap there, and with the holes at the top, you've then also got quite a large cavity down the side here. This is where the bulkhead usually connects to the van. You could wrap it in material, or some people wrap it up, and that looks okay, but it's quite an uneven surface, and so no amount of scrim foam or anything like that will give you a nice consistent finish. I have ordered some parts to fill the gaps up the top and on the B-pillar. The first part of that I've ordered directly from Mercedes. This looks very similar to the other one, but there's a key difference. If we compare them side by side, they both have a front side, but only one then extends to the back. So that cavity that I pointed out is then covered up nicely there. That covers it up all the way nice and all the way down to the bottom. It extends out and covers into where the floor's going. And the second part of the jigsaw is ordered from an American company called TerraWagon. They have moulded plastic pieces which cover the cavities on the top and the rail just above. So that's how they come. I've added automotive trim clips and sunk them in, and then drilled the appropriate holes on the body to hold them all in place. One just to get a bit better of a finish on them holding them in place, and that's what I'm going to do for all of the panels in the van. I'm going to countersink and push these into existing holes so then you don't see any of the exposed fixings. It's one thing that I've learned recently, and I'm going to implement it as much as I can. This clip is one of the trim clips here. So you can see it's got little teeth on it there, so you want to do a 7mm hole through the material that you're looking to hold onto the wall. You can then twist that in, and then a 6mm hole into the sheet metal, which then can push in. That's of course very good for the installation to hide the fixtures, but also for future. One of the goals that I want to achieve with this van is to very easily be able to pull a panel off and either upgrade or maintain should it be necessary. So that's a big thing that I've learnt and I'm implementing now. The wiring that used to be on the panel here now can fit behind. I'm going to make a slight adjustment into this one just so it can be tucked behind there. I'm then going to have the cabinet coming in, and as the wire then goes behind, that'll be hidden. It's right where all of this wiring is anyway, and then as it runs behind there, all protected on the back with the insulation on the exposed metal edges with the little U-trim. It goes again back there, it's held nice and taut and then it won't, it's got a bit of flex if it needs to, but it won't rattle around. And then the hole just in there with the U-trim on the bottom again, so then there's no rubbing. And the existing screw that was the earthing point for the rear of the electrics, I've relocated and added just there, scrubbed the metal so you get a good earth on there, and I've attached it on the back so then when the wall comes up it won't be interrupted by there. And then once this is all materialed over, there's then nothing which is protruding from the trim, giving you a really nice finish. I'm also going to look to get 3D printed caps just to go in here, just to give a little bit of structure in here, so then you don't accidentally press the material in or anything along those lines. As well as being really handy for hiding any of the fixtures, those trim clips are fantastic because you can set them in, and no doubt when I need to take them out 3 or 4 times to do wiring, nice and easily pop out and then fit back in individually as well. So if you just need the top one in or just the side, makes life much easier for installs. So I've just put them in place now just to test fit them and make sure they all work fine. But as well as hiding the wiring above, the wiring is then hid behind that trim on the door. I'm going to wrap them all in a material that I've chosen. The 2 trims, the door trim and then the rear arch as well, that's all going to be wrapped in the same material. I'm going to leave the B-pillar trims the same as what they are now, just to give you that kind of factory plus finish. And the kit itself is called a right-hand drive Terrawagon trim tidy kit, and I got it from Rhodes Vans. A really nice guy that runs it called Will. Yeah, it was really helpful, and as far as I can tell, they're readily available. It's a nice and easy way to fill quite a lot of gaps of everything in the van, just to give you that leveled up finish. Well, I'm of course incredibly proud of Project 1, and that's gone to a fantastic home. Little things like the panel trim clips to push everything in, so then it's a hidden fixture, and wrapping all of the different trim, as well as, you know, improving on, rather than having workarounds, having fit-made kits which will cover the cavities and create a really nice finish. I'm implementing everything that I've learned from Project 1 onto this second van, really just to level it up. I mean, this conversion for what I've quoted for it already has that kind of leveled up thing in mind, but just me practicing my techniques as a creative and running a business, I think it's always good to just keep going forward, because if you don't, you end up going backwards. A refinement on this vehicle is going to be no cutting in the sides of the van, so I've made a slightly different decision on the boiler front, so I don't need the exhaust out the side. And for the 230 shore power, I'm going to plug that in through the bonnet. I've got a creative way for that coming up in future episodes. But what I've just been doing now is I've been routing the wire for the 230 volt into the bonnet, which will just sit there until I get the thing I need for it. So that's just routed up there. I'm going to zip tie it to the existing wiring loom there, and then it goes up and through into the dash. In the passenger footwell, you can see where the wire comes through the existing loom there. I've tucked it behind this panel. The wire comes then down under and through here. It then goes into the footwell, into a little cavity that's existing in there, and then comes up and out through down there. And then I've had the side step off. You can see the wire comes in here, goes down and behind. It's got the rail which holds the sliding door in here, so it's quite important that it does go behind there and all of the screws match up correctly. But then it comes back up into what will be underneath the kitchen galley unit, and then back to where the power system is. Again, just another little job that can get done in the prep stages of the van, which would be a nightmare if I was to put the laminate down and so on and so forth. So just thinking of all these little jobs I can do now, which will then massively get the van ready for all of the good stuff. Water tanks. So for this van and any van, you need a fresh water tank and then somewhere to put the fresh water once you've used it. So that'll be a grey water tank. In this build, I've gone for a 75 litre spare wheel water tank. As a plan, I'm putting the fifth wheel hung on the back. That then frees up the spare wheel carrier and the space under the van there. And so that's where I can just get this and nicely use the existing hardware and mount point to nice and easily mount the fresh water. The fresh water will go up through the floor of the van into the water pump and expansion tank, then to all of the taps and the showers out the back, and then once the water has been used, of course, then it needs to go somewhere to store rather than just dumping it out into wherever you parked. Some people do that. That's where the grey water tank comes in. The grey water tank is 65 litres, and so you don't need as much grey water as you do white water, because of course you're going to be using some in cooking and cleaning and in consuming. And so this then is going to be mounted on behind the rear driver's seat underneath. So where the way that the chassis is laid out underneath the van, there's a good bit of room behind that front driver's wheel to be able to mount this. And so the waste pipe for the sink is going to go directly down through and into here. This van in particular is relatively simple when it comes to waste. The only outlet that we're going to need is for the sink behind me here. And I've positioned that so then it will go directly down and into the waste. So minimal piping and holes in the van needed, which is always a benefit. Of course, then to consider as well, the spare wheel water tank is going to be perfectly fine in the existing rack that's there, but I'm going to need to make some mount points for the waste. So I'm going to do that now before any flooring and anything's down. A bit easier to mount it to the chassis of the van when it's all still exposed. As this, I believe, will be the last point of this video where I need to do all of the kind of the hidden under the casings and decorative items. These are all like essential things which are just smart to do right at the start of the build. So then, of course, before you start putting walls and floors and everything down, you're not then having to re-rip everything back out. First step on that then is to get under the van, drill the pilot hole for the mounting bracket for the grey tank. In a view under the van here, you can see the front driver's wheel just pointed away from the van. There is the exhaust that runs down, but there's a really convenient channel just here which fits the waste tank. So I've been underneath the van, I've put the bolts through, I've measured the railings which are going to hold it all in place, and I'm just going to cut through twice on the cable to get the length I need to fit the race tank to the bottom of the van. That is 100% nicer than using an angle grinder. Sparks going everywhere. Nice, clean and easy cut. Even though the tank is not going to move, there's not going to be much friction against it, I am conscious that this is going to be a metal bracket with a plastic toe. So just at the points of contact, I've got this like rubber cement tape which bonds to itself. I'm just going to wrap that around, like I say, where the points come into contact with the tank, just to save any rattles, vibrations and any wear and tear over a long period of time. Underneath the van I need to connect the metal brace to the chassis of the van, and so the way that I'm going to do that is by using one of these. These are riv nuts which this one's an M8 the bolts go into, but the way that you install them is by drilling a hole, putting the riv nut in, and then using a riv nut gun to squash the area at the back there. Once all of that is squashed together, it squashes onto the bottom or the sheet metal that you're putting it into. And then line that up with the hole, put your bolt through and bolt it in. Really nice, good way to bolt to sheet metal, and it means that I get to use my new toy as well. This is an air riv nut gun. Proper. It's like Formula 1. If you're considering different options for water tanks in the van, I highly recommend the spare wheel water tank. On the Sprinter here, there's just some bolts to twist, one there and one there, and it loosens these hooks, which then lowers and lifts the spare wheel out, which is just over there, and then I've put the spare wheel tank in its place. You can see over this side there's a quarter inch BSP for the inlet, which is going to go up and into the water system, and then there's a 1/2 inch BSP there for the outlet. On the top as well there's a vent, and the vent is just in case for overfill or pressure differences and so on. Once you lift it up, left one first and hook it onto these, you then use the bolt at the top just to tighten it in place. Fantastic product. It takes taking me maybe 10 minutes to fit it. Using existing hardware, existing brackets for an incredibly secure fit, and providing that you don't need a wheel in there, it's going to be wasted space, so it's made to measure and perfect. I'm coming down the side of the van. You can see the grey water tank is installed. Just need to tighten up that final strap. That's both of the tanks installed. Very happy with the progress and getting everything done now. I believe pretty close to be able to certainly plumb in the diesel heater next. The electric power station, that's coming in a couple of weeks, but all of the furniture, so like the laminate and the aluminium extrusion, all of that's currently being shipped and arriving soon. So very exciting times for the van and for the build. Do appreciate you joining me this week, and I hope that this has been informational, maybe entertaining, and do join me next week where I'll be fitting the diesel heater and starting to get onto some of the pretty proper campervan-y bits rather than more of the prep bits. But all necessary work, really enjoying it. Look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.